Hey, what's going on? It's Bebop here. Today's video is going to be about tanking and my favorite setup for tanking the M1 and M2s and the regular expeditions for the extra tanking bonus for the gold that you get. And let's go over that really quick. It includes a Firestaff and Greatsword. Now, the Greatsword I'm going to be running this week has Plague Strikes and, of course, always Trenchant Strikes on your Greatsword. In my opinion, third perk is what it is, but Plague Strikes right here, the enemies are healing this week, so any heavy attacks that I do, which is what you always do with the Greatsword, inflicts disease for 8 seconds, reducing the healing effectiveness on targets by 26%, and outgoing healing by 13%. But the outgoing is not really important, but the incoming is. If we look at the mutations, and if you don't know how to look to see what mutation is every week and what you need to jump for so you can have better survivability, just click on mutations, and then let's go here to M1 and M2. You're not going to be doing M3 most likely, so let's say M1 and M2. In an M1, you have this first box. In an M2, you have the second box. Let's go over the first box here. Creeping. On death, enemies cast a spell granting other enemies in the area void and power, increasing the void damage by 50%. Abyssal. Enemies deal 50% of all damage as void damage, so you need a spec for void protection. Okay, void protection amulet, and about 5 of the cut pristine amethyst gems in your clothing. That would get you around 50%. 50% is the cap on protection. So in an M1 and M2, you don't necessarily need to go to 50%, but it would make your life a lot easier if you just went ahead and did that. You'll get through this with taking a lot less damage, okay? And then you don't have to blame your healers and tanks for your, malpractice here. Enemies apply stacking of paranoia when hit. After 4 hits, basically, you're going to have a burst appear underneath your feet, so get ready to dodge. And then Oblivion, enemies apply leech on hit, dealing 20 to 30% base damage as void, and then they heal the enemy for 90 to 120% damage dealt over time. So that incoming healing needs to be reduced. So healers using Petrified Scream on your clothing or Void Gauntlet would be really nice. And also running in these random mutations, Great Axe, people. If you want to get through these faster and just get over with, get back to your OPR or whatever you're doing, put a Great Axe on, group up the enemies properly like a real DPS will, and then go ahead and mow them down that way instead of just sitting back range shooting with your bow or Firestaff. PvE is different than PvP. PvP, you could do that just fine. PvE, if you want to get through them quick and easy, you need to learn group comp. I'm working on a group comp video for mutations and for the hive that I will be coming out with sometime this week, so stay tuned for that. Let's go over the Firestaff here. What do I have? I have the Inferno. Empowering Fireball seems to be the best in my opinion just to have on for PvE. Now, if you're in PvP, then Refreshing Pillar of Fire. But if you're in PvE or PvP, Refreshing Pillar of Fire, PvE would be the Empowering Fireball. Sorry about that, a little tongue twister there. It's going to do just a really quick burst damage, and that's what we're here for. You also gain Keeling Empowered, and if you're 15 meters within the enemy, you do 15% more damage. Let's go over the Heart Rune. Right here, I have the Cunning Heart Rune of Stone Form. Good for tanks. Hardened Form, gain additional 10% armor for 4 seconds on hit taken, 30% max. Fortifying Form, gain Fortify on activation, increase armor by 10% for 4 seconds. On the clothing, try to have health on as many pieces as you can if you're Greatsword tanking, because you don't need refreshing as much with the Greatsword tanking. It's going to be pretty quick to cool down anyways, especially with the skill tree I have. Enchanted Ward and health here. I have Sundering Shockwave on the clothing here for Void Dark Plate, so when I rock this hammer for boss fights or whatnot, I got Sundering Clear Out, 24% for 7 seconds. Got the 11% with the Sundering Shockwave on the clothing, that's 35%, and then 30% for the Armor Breaker, that's 65% rend. Boom. If you have a proper spear in your group with Sundering stacks, that will be a lot of rend. Also, you don't need to do all your different hammer rends, but most groups, they are ranged on these M1 and M2s, and you're just maybe not going to have that. On the gloves, we have Enchanted Ward, Empowering Incinerate, and Health. Incinerate deals 19% damage to all targets with burn. So if I burn them with like a heavy attack first, then hit the Fireball, then hit Incinerate, you're going to be doing more damage as a tank, which is going to help increase my threat level and hold aggro better. I have Enchanted Ward, Refreshing, and Health. I have Leeching Cyclone, because sometimes I will switch to a spear on certain boss fights, because, the other DPS are usually not with an enfeebling Skewer Spear, and they're mostly ranged. So I will do that myself. Leechy Cyclone helps me recover some health. Not the best boots, but they are what they are. 45% void damage resistance. I could add another gem and be 50, but in 1 and 2, this is just fine. I'm in medium gear here. Also, by the way, a lot of tanks are going to go heavy. You can also go light, but this is an intermediate that really I don't see anybody else covering out there. That if you want to have really good protection, as you can see down here, the physical and elemental protection is huge. 2,284 and 2,200. And I still have, with all the other pieces of health and health on the amulet, I have 20,601. If I didn't have any health on the pieces and amulet without health, I would be at 18,000. Okay, so it's about a 2,000. It's like 18,600. Okay, it's like a 2,000 difference, almost to the dot. So it's a pretty big health increase when you have those health pieces on your clothing. Now my amulet here is void protection, health unimpeded. If you had divine, that'd be better than unimpeded. I'm rocking the Blood Drinker. Has nothing to do with elemental stuff. It's just leeching, heart, and keen awareness. That's what I'm using it for. And then regenerating and despise, must on any tank and earring, in my opinion. And then empowering toast, which you can also have fortified toast and it'd be BIS, but is what it is. Now, why medium? Well, because in certain boss fights, and also I am using the Blood Drinker here, so I'll be doing 25% less damage, but I'll have 25% more lifesteal. The reason being, because I end up in a boss fight a lot of times alone in a M1 and M2, I need to be able to do some damage and get some health back while doing that damage. If you're in heavy and you're trying to do this, you're not going to get enough health back. If you're in light and doing this, you won't have enough protection a lot of times. So I find this medium with the Void Dark Plate that increases your armor 20%, a really good happy medium. 300 con, 274 strength, and it is just really, really nice. Now, I need to adjust the stats because I see they are off a little bit, and that's what we're going to go ahead and do here. Let's respec 304 right there. We're just going to keep that there. We're going to go rest strength here. Inferno works off strength and int if you want, but if your strength is higher, then it'll work just purely off strength. And then, of course, the Greatsword you'll be just fine with there. If you want to put some into, dex here, 50 into dex, you're more than welcome to. If you switch to a sword, you're going to want that stamina regen. Sword and shield on bosses all the time, and that would be your best way to help the DPS do damage. So I like to switch to sword and shield on boss fights, but the Greatsword for mobs. Let's go to the Firestaff. What are we using here? We're using Burnout so we can get out of the fight or to the enemies really quickly. You can feel free to change this skill tree up. It's by no means perfect, but it's kind of what I'm running with right now. If you go with all in underneath the Burnout, then your Firestaff cooldowns will be reduced 5% for each foe hit, but by the time you get to the mobs and you use your Firestaff, you're not really touching it the rest of the fight. You're on the Greatsword, so I don't feel like these are really that important. The critical hits will add Smolder, I think is more important. Haste, more important. And then hitting a target within 4 meters of the players when you do Incinerate is going to create a field around you dealing, 20% weapon damage to all nearby enemies in a 4 meter radius for 5 seconds. And then this dot right here, all attacks increase base damage against targets with Smolder. So when you roll up and you hit a target, let's say a heavy attack, you inflict Smolder, you can then do the Fireball, you're in your rune, they come to you, and you can do Incinerate. Incinerate is a stagger. Let's go over that here. Incinerate. Cause a fire explosion 3 meter radius around yourself, 125% weapon damage, and staggering your target. Inflict Smolder on struck foes, dealing 4.5% weapon damage every half second for 6 seconds. Ability has Grit. That's another thing that's really good. It's also a taunt. So Firestaff isn't for tanking. Well, they have a built-in taunt for it. You can be versatile if you know what you're doing and you want to have fun. Tanking doesn't need to be boring as hell. Make it fun, guys, okay? No one else wants to tank out there. You tank how you want. As long as you can make it work and hold aggro and do what you can do, that's the point, okay? I could rapier tank with a Void Gauntlet offhand if I wanted to, but, not as fun to me because rapier spamming is really annoying. Scorched. Incinerate will inflict the target with 12% weaken for 5 seconds. And then cleanse 1 debuff. So if you're in Starstone this week and the boss throws up on you, the first lost boss in Starstone, then you can cleanse your 1 debuff of puke and nature damage and give it right back to him, or you just cleanse it away from you. If you have the sword, you could return it to him, but at least cleansing it is really good because it does tick really hard. Empowering Fireball down the tree, you reduce your cooldown 7%, and then light and heavy attacks inflict a stack of Smolder, dealing 4.5% weapon damage for every half second. That's why I like to start off with the heavy attack and then all attacks after I inflict smolder are going to deal 10% increased base damage against targets with burn or smolder. That works in unison. Now that's why I say you walk up, you heavy hit, you fireball, and then when they come to you, you incinerate, and then you go right to your greatsword, slam down, and then just start swinging. Okay, that's how I find the best way to work with the Firestaff Greatsword combo. And then when you're ready to get out of a fight, if the enemies are dying, then go ahead and try to hit this without getting staggered and get out of there. You got your haste, you can run around and be cool with the Firestaff. After not getting hit, you get in power 5%. While holding a Firestaff, critical strike damage increases by 15%. While your Firestaff abilities gain extra 10% chance of critical strike. Heavy attacks now do a 1 meter splash, but damage is reduced to 120%. While holding a Firestaff, 50% mana. Above 50% mana, gain 5% in power. And then, of course, you got the rune that we all know about, 20% empowerment. And if you do that with incinerate, and then I also have the empowering incinerate on the clothing, I'm actually going to do extra damage, and that's just going to help hold aggro. Taunting is one thing, everybody. If I taunt, that does not mean I will hold aggro. That is simply, hey, enemies, I'm the tank, come here. I have to then do damage to hold threat. You have to build threat by damage. So if you're tanking in the hive and you immediately taunt and you think you're good and you're going to hide behind your shield or whatnot, you will lose aggro instantly. I see it all the time in the hive. Same thing in mutations. If I taunt and some dum-dum is over here with the Firestaff, like, I'm going to start shooting now, he taunted. I'm going to lose aggro instantly and they're going to go to you, okay? Healers, you got to let the tank kind of build up a little bit of threat, and then when you see him starting to swing, then you can throw your Sacred, okay? Don't throw it too soon. Don't throw a beacon on him for haste. You will get aggro if he takes damage. Let's go to the Greatsword. Greatsword right here. This is the ability I run, the skill tree I run. I go left side. If you go right side, your abilities are going to be a lot slower to cool down. If you have a refreshing move on your Greatsword, if you're running Serenity or the Sandsworm Greatsword, then okay, you can mix it up and go with whatever you feel. If you find yourself at a boss fight where you need the extra health, I would just switch all your stuff to go to right side ultimate, but the left side to get your cooldowns quicker to help regain aggro and regain abilities, especially Relentless Rush to get out of the fight and on to the next one. Because when you do a Relentless Rush and you hit enemies, you will get some haste. So that's what you want to do here. Gain 20% haste for 5 seconds when hitting a target with Onslaught skill tree ability. So at the end of fights, you'll see me a lot of times do this. Get the haste, and then I'm out. I go with the Roaring Rupture all the way down. Now, this doesn't work as good as it used to, but when you're tanking, it seems to work better than when you're DPS, and it's weird. I don't know. Sometimes it just seems to work really well, and then sometimes it doesn't seem to work at all. But Defiant Stance, so basically when you go into a mob group, if you start off with a Relentless Rush, and then you do the Roaring Rupture, it pulls people in. You saw the wave right there, right? If I do that in Defiant Stance, it will push enemies away from you. So you want to make sure you're in the Onslaught tree stance before you do that, and then it will pull the enemies to you. It's kind of like if the group doesn't have a great axe for grab wall, then you need to do it yourself. Once again, I'm in the Onslaught skill tree, which sword is down. Now when I slam down, you'll see the circle go inward. Boom, pulls the enemies towards you. And that's what I have here. Feel free to, pick whatever you find that you may like more, but that's what I go with for both of those. And that is basically the tank setup that I do daily that I think is a lot of fun, does good damage, and also you can hold aggro really well. And incorporating the Firestaff is just fun to me. It's just something different. If I just go Sword and Shield and Hammer, I did that for years. It's so boring. In an M1 and M2, you can do a flail also if you want to get the extra haste on the vortex and get out of there. It will also give your teammates fortify and empowerment. So it's all up to you, but I find this way is fun and it makes me just more entertained while doing the dailies. Always keep a spear on you like this, because a lot of times the DPS will be ranged only. So you want Enfeebling Skewer, Sundering Stacks, and Disdain Infliction. You'll be good to go. And keep a lot of different things on you, okay? Switch it up, have fun. All right, that's today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Group comp video coming soon. I'll talk to y'all later.